Are you looking for?
Hello, everybody. We're back. We're just listening to a introduction piece by Father Jodi to a cut off of the disc that comes in the Source Family book, or with the Source Family book, if you will. And that piece is part of a concert played at the Beverly Hills High in 1973, a time we call the 70s. And then I was going to ask Makushla, Aquarian, who's with us, what that concert was like. Why don't you tell the folks about that, Makushla? Sure.
Hello, everybody. Glad that you're here. Well, it was, as always, Jehovah's concerts were just incredible. People were always just blown away by his presentation, by the incredible music and what he had to say, and it was an incredible concert.
Now, we just heard you before that in the Story of Death, which, for those of you who might not have heard the piece, or you'll hear this rebroadcast this Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, for those of you who live in the so-called Pacific time zone, you'll hear that again, and that's the Story of Death by Makushla. Now, it's when I first saw the name of that cut, when I got the book some time ago, I avoided listening to it because sometimes I don't like to hear stories of death. But it's not a really depressing piece. Why don't you explain, was this really teaching that came down, or can you explain the text?
Well, we just had two people that had passed away in the Source family, and it just felt appropriate to talk about death, and that death is just a transition. It's just a transition out of this life. Birth and death are like bookends, but there is no end to our lives. Our soul lives forever, and we just keep evolving after we die, and there's nothing to fear.
Now tell me about your harp playing. It's really beautiful, and I heard you still have the harp.
I do, yes. I have it in my living room.
Terrific.
And I love the harp, and it's just a beautiful instrument. A dear man, Damascus, who was in the Source family, gave it to me for a birthday present.
Wow.
And I never really took lessons, but if you have any kind of just a flow with the harp, as long as it's in tune, you can just play it and get beautiful melodies out of it. It's very soothing. Right.
And then before that we heard You Don't Know What's Going On, which was by Tim Guerin, and also known as Hom. Is that right? Home. Yeah. Sorry, I have problems with my H's. It's been observed before. I've had treatment for it. I don't really know what to do about it. Now, Omne, would you tell us something about Tim? Maybe Omne will come off of the couch of conversation and onto the chair of conversation, and then Makushla will go wherever she wants to. Okay? So tell us something about
Tim Guerin was a very talented musician, and was in the local Seattle music scene just recently with his cover band. But back in when he was 18 and 19 years old, he was in Los Angeles. He was friends with Joni Mitchell. He hung out he opened for her. She kind of took him under her wing, and then of course he had an obnoxious personality, so so there was some alienation there after a while. When he broke her E string, he wanted to tune her guitar for her before she went on stage at the Troubadour, and he broke her E string, and she stopped talking to him. But anyway, but you know, so he was in this. He was in the scene, and he was kind of a puppy dog that people liked, but he was, like a lot of musicians, understandably, he was very self-absorbed, and he met Jim and Robin, and they, well, he played with Robin Baker, played music, and they got a contract. Smokey Robers was their manager, and but Tim was dealing with him was problematic.
So he was part of the Source family in a way before there was a source family.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to ask, some people seem to fit and some people didn't seem to fit, and meaning that they stayed for a while with the family and some people would come and go and some people would just go. So what was that about?
Well, Father had the capacity to simply accept you as you were, love you unconditionally, because he had no judgments of you, and this was particularly touching for Tim because he had personal problems with people. He couldn't really get along really well with people. Because he was very self-absorbed about his art. Mm-hmm. So he always loved Father to the day that he died, and because it was a special relationship. And he was with Father for like a whole year before anybody really showed up mm-hmm. in terms of a spiritual family. Mm-hmm. And that was his wonderful time. Then when we had a communal situation, he didn't really fit well because he didn't work and play well with others, you know. Right. But we always loved him, but it was an uneasy kind of relationship.
Now, what was it like? Father had a group of women, kind of like a group of ladies, a kind of a guardian council almost. Mm-hmm. And then what was it like to be a guy in that kind of company with all those powerful women? What was that like for you?
Well, my primary relationship was with Father, and then the gender roles went through amazing rapid transformations, mm-hmm. Practically day by day. Mm-hmm. And what ultimately evolved was to acknowledge woman as the power of the subconscious mind, or the mind of God, mm-hmm. and to honor her for mm-hmm. that, and that she, to be in a good relationship with a good woman was really going to open doors for you in your relationship with yourself, mm-hmm. and the God within you. So it was all just part of we had our role. We understood that ultimately he saw us as the men in the family, young men in the family, as himself, as his spiritual sons. Mm-hmm. So we had a very dignified niche, mm-hmm. you know, or a role that we played. Right. And the women kind of had theirs. It was very specific and gender-oriented. So there was very clear definition between men and women.
Wow. Now, right now what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to play Echoes of a Crone by Isis. And Isis wants to say something. Isis Aquarian joins us again.
Hi, I just wanted to add to that because you'd asked about powerful women around yes. Father. But believe me, the men in the family did not lack anything. Okay. Because they got, even though we became we became the mothers of the family. Right. The women were the council, and Yehovah only had 14 women, right. but there was 60, 70 mm-hmm. only. Mm-hmm. But there was 60 or 70 other women mm-hmm. of right. the family who were just as beautiful, just as powerful right. in their own rights, and they became right. the women of the sons.
I see.
You know, and all the women were sisters. Right. We had the sisterhood happenings. Right. So, they did not miss out on anything, believe me. Right. And then they had us too. We were the mothers.
Well, we're going to talk about that after. I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay.
In closing, because I know that's the moment we're all been waiting for, to talk about the sexy side of the Source family. We're going to hear pieces of Echoes of a Crone, a music video, which I wish you could see when I play, but you'll hear the audio of. Hey, check this out, check it out. In the middle of it, because of the peculiar nature of iTunes, it will stop and start for just a second, and then we'll hear a piece of an Elliot Mintz interview with Jim Baker, who later became Father Yo, and we'll hear another Yehovah 13 piece from Magnificence of the Memory. You're listening to Under the Influence on HollowEarthRadio.com. And you're listening to Under the Influence with David N. on HollowEarthRadio.com. And so we just heard a piece by Father talking about the sacred herbs. So I was going to ask Makushla, who's joined us again after saying hi to Louise, who I don't know. So as Isis was saying before, there were a lot of powerful women, and then there were in Father's circle.
Yes.
And then there were many women and men in the Source family, about 140 or so. Hey, was there a lot of sex going on?
Well,
Well, please don't be shy. Oh, hi, Louise. Go ahead.
in the Source family, we went through different phases of doing different practices with sexuality, and we went through abstinence all but once a month when a woman was fertile if she wanted to get pregnant, and then we
for the full moon. Remember?
For the full moon.
Yeah, then we would all have sex on the full moon, but not together. Yeah.
Okay.
And then we did also have Dionism,
right,
which was it was a form of Tantra from the East.
Right. And could people who are not familiar with Tantra from the East, could you explain what that Dionism is?
Well, in Dionism, the woman and the man would engage each other. But the man would be sitting up in a chair in like a meditation position.
Right.
And the woman would engage and, come to an orgasm herself. And the man's role was to hold his seed and take the energy that he's receiving from her up to his brain. Right.
So it wasn't so much for like a pure pleasure thing. It was more of a spiritual practice.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. And I think the pleasure was to be able to conquer your animal body, your animal self, which we called it. So there was, a great pride in that, and of course it was wonderful to have, the right man and the right woman do that together.
Now, Isis, did you want to say something about that part? Okay, don't be shy about that. All right, okay. And then we just heard the sacred herb. Father Yod was talking about the sacred herb practices. That makes me think that there were drugs. But tell me more about that.
Well, we used the sacred herb only in the morning. We would all get up, 140 of us get up at the same time in the morning, like 3 o'clock in the morning, and get ready for meditation. And we would take a 6-second toke of the sacred herb, which was like a ceremony that Yehovah would administer the sacred herb. Everyone would file through in front of him and take a 6-second toke. And then we'd all go downstairs and chant and take this energy from the sacred herb and just go soaring with it. And Yehovah would teach, for hours, and we'd all sit there and just go off the charts, when the sun came up, it was like we were landing back down to earth again. Right.
So then, what was it like? I asked Omi, what was it like being a man among a lot of powerful women? What were these Source family men like?
Oh, they were beautiful, and still are beautiful. They looked like gods, They all had long hair and long beards, and the men wore robes, and they were there for God, they saw, of course, the God in Yehovah, and they were very stalwart sons, very dependable, very conscientious, talented, gifted.
Right. All right. Well, thanks, Makushla. We're going to go on to a piece, spoken word piece by Father Yod or Yehovah called "The Atheistic Verse is the Spiritual View." You're listening to Under the Influence on HollowEarthRadio.com. Thanks for listening. And we just heard Father Yod teaching at the Atherton Mansion, San Francisco, a disc that comes right with your book, The Source Family, which I know that you're going to go to Elliott Bay to buy. Elliott Bay is a wonderful bookstore located in Seattle. Seattle is a city in Wyoming. So
it is not.
I know. Here's Isis. So I had a question. Isis is back with us. She said bye to her friend Louise. Hey, there was a lot of sex going on, a lot of interesting things going on in the family, yet you had like an overall administrative role in some way. How did you help make this work? Although Father was Father and there was spiritual teaching and a center around that, how did Because I have the feeling that you played an important role in helping things run.
Well, there was sex, drugs, rock and roll, and we added spirit to it, and I think that's been talked about.
Right.
We didn't do orgies like a lot of people thought we did. It was pretty much one-on-one, even with the father and his women. It was just one-on-one energy.
Right.
So everybody got what they needed. Nobody felt like they didn't, get what they needed. I was, there's one in every group. The bulldog, the dragon lady, the hatchet lady.
Right.
And, I just, Father gave me free rein because he knew that I would do what he needed to do, but he needed to stay neutral.
Right.
And, somebody needed to implement certain things. So that was me.
How did you come to embrace your inner hatchet lady?
I just came into the family, and I wasn't intimidated because I had known Jim Baker. I was a little bit older, and I had some life experience, and that was just my personality growing up. Anyhow, I grew up in an Air Force family, oldest of 7. So, I mean, it was kind of like my personality to begin with, I think.
Right.
And so just administrative type things, household, and then we had the Council of Women, who were the mothers of the family, and then we just had to make sure duties were done. And
now, originally, Father didn't have 14 women, so to speak. I don't know if "have" is the right word, but there wasn't a circle of 14 women around.
No.
How did it happen that happened?
Okay, well, for a long time, there was just him and Robin. And a group of the family members, and everybody, they weren't living communally yet, and we called that the early family. That was like a special time frame for everybody. And then we started living communally, and Father did not live with us right away. He lived separate, and we just kind of, the household took care of itself. It's when Father moved in with us. And then things just had to be more orderly and taken care of, and he took care of certain things, and the restaurant crew we all had a part to play. That's what it was. We all had our piece of the puzzle, our part in the play, and nobody was really anybody more special than the other. We just had our part, whether it was karmically or because that's what we fitted. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Sometimes after I ask a question, I have a hard time remembering what I asked. But I think you did terrific. Tell us about Elliott Bay Books. You're going to go there tonight. What I know folks have to go. What will they experience when they come to Elliott Bay Books tonight?
Well, what I have found that everybody gets really excited about is we don't just go and sign books or speak. We show film footage. We play some of the music that people know about. We have a panel of family members that are going to be there. And there's just we will answer anything. There's a lot of questions and answers. We're pretty entertaining. We've always been very entertaining and very colorful and very fun. And so we're bringing something because a lot of people have read the book. Some people don't know anything about it. But we have a journey. We have a story to tell that's very unique. And people become very engrossed within it. And we just have a lot of fun. It's very colorful.
Now, part of one thing that people who live more of a secular life and away from spiritual sources, they might say, well, the Source family is a cult, and be dismissive that way.
Cult is culture. Cult is one of the things we're trying to demystify, and we're not the only ones. A lot of things are being called cult right now. It's becoming a very in almost term. And in Europe, it never had that meaning. It had it in America. So, and I guess Mary Kay is a cult. Catholic Church is a cult. I mean,
well, the difference
like
between the Source family and Mary Kay is you all are very, very cute.
I know.
And they're not. I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry. And if there's any Mary Kay people out there,
so we were a cult because we had our own little world happening and our own rules and teachings. But even that, Father didn't want to become dogma or dogmatic, and so that's why he just kept, moving on to something else, and finally, just in the end, just dissolving the whole thing and making us all go on our way.
Well, thank you, Isis Aquarian. We're almost at our time. You've been listening to a very special edition of Under the Influence with David N., with my guests, Isis Aquarian, Makushla Aquarian, Omne Aquarian, behind me on the couch, and of course Jodi from Process Media, who could forget, transportation person and also multimedia genius. So I want to thank everyone. This broadcast will repeat Sunday at 10 a.m. in my usual time slot, so I can do something called Have a Family Life. It will also repeat sporadically, as Amber and Garrett will. So thank you very much for listening to Under the Influence. We'll close with Most Prized Possession by Yehovah 13 from the new disc, Magnificence of the Memory, and a piece of